Everybody. We're going to get started in just a minute here. Hope everybody had a fabulous day today, got outside some. But just to introduce the program while we're waiting for a few more people, you know, Dining with the Doctors was a program that we started here. Well, we were hoping to start March 22nd as a live event, but we've turned it into a virtual event, changed a little bit of the topics with everything going on in the world to how to boost your immune system. We are still hoping to get to an in-person place where we can have cooking classes and more information with some of our doctors live. But for now, we will all have to work with our virtual world. We do have you all muted, but if you hit the participants button at the bottom, you will see a little blue hand raise. You can go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, or you can use the chat box. There's a little chat box and you can click that. And you can type in a question as we're talking, and we can go through those towards the end. We've tried to unmute before, but everyone's background noise gets a little crazy. So for now, we're gonna use the chat button. And what other pieces did I want to? Yeah, just we have Dr. Donna Michel with us again today. And for anyone who wasn't here last week, Dr. Donna Michel is a retired internist and nephrologist, which, like I said, I had to look that up. That's a kidney doctor. And one of her passions as she was retiring was to go get also her certificate and her board certified for lifestyle medicine. So, you know, she was really hoping that she could catch patients before they got so sick, because it was really hard to see everybody getting so sick. And at that point, you know, there's still a lot you can do, but there'd be even more if she could catch some of these patients before the illnesses came about. So that's a little bit about Donna. We're really excited that she's here again tonight. So just a teeny bit of a review for those who might have missed the last two sessions. The first one was on something called hydrotherapy, which I thought it was interesting. Many of you guys know Loma Linda. And I was listening to a talk today from two doctors who said, you know, they really believe in hydrotherapy, especially for patients with COVID, along with the flu and many other viruses. But they're saying a lot of times by the time the patients come to the hospital, it's too late. Like, they just don't have the time to do the hydrotherapy there. So they're trying to set up protocols instead of just telling people, it looks like you have COVID, go home and do the best you can on your own. They're trying to work up a protocol that's also going to include hot and cold showers and some things around hydrotherapy. They're working to get approval now. So that will be interesting, even though there's no, you know, double-blind tests and all the different things with proof that this can, you know, eliminate. I think they've seen enough evidence that it can help, that they're trying to do that, which I thought was really great. We also talked about just checking your vitamin D level. You know, over 50 to 60% of us on this call is low in vitamin D, including myself. My daughter, who was checked this last year, was low. And vitamin D, I read, helps activate your T cells, which are your killer cells. And
oh, you're stealing my thunder already.
Oh, all right. I'm not going to say that, but I just read that today and was like, yes, that's what all of the pathogens and the bad viruses. All right. So with that, I'm going to have Donna now give you, if she wants, a quick review on last week, or we can jump right into foods and nutrition this week.
Well, so just briefly, last week we summarized some different lifestyle choices that people can make to boost immunity. And so this week we thought that we would just do a deeper dive into the actual use of food, or using our nutrition to boost our immunity. So with that, we'll go right on ahead. So I thought that it might be helpful for us to start out by just making sure that everybody knows what actually is our immune system, just kind of by way of background. Not too hardcore science, it's a Sunday night and we don't want people falling asleep. But I wanted to just give a brief overview, because I think it's going to make some of the things later on make a little bit more sense. So our immune system is actually an entire network of cells and tissues and organs that help protect us from threats to our health, such as viruses and bacteria. And what our immune system does is it prevents these infections from actually taking hold in our body. So the infection has maybe already gotten into us, but the immune system helps prevent that from actually taking hold. So this slide just shows an overview of the different organs involved in our immune system. And so some of the things that we're fairly familiar with, like tonsils and adenoids or lymph nodes, things like that, but maybe some things that we weren't aware of, like our spleen is involved in our immunity, or Peyer's patches, which are patches of cells within the gut. So these are all kind of important parts of our immune system. In addition to the organs, we also have a whole array of cells that are involved with our immune system. And these are generally white blood cells. And so we have kind of the set on the left side, the innate immune system, which we'll define here in just a moment, which has one certain type of white cells. And then our adaptive immune system on the right side, which is another type of white blood cells. And they each kind of are involved in somewhat different ways in helping to protect us from potential pathogens. The things that I would want you to just make note of here is these little natural killer cells here on the left side, which we're going to talk a bit about. Oops. And then also our B cells are important because they help produce antibodies, which help us to recognize things and defend against them in the future. So our innate immunity, which is where those little natural killer cells lived, is kind of our non-specific general defense against any kind of harmful germs and substances that may get access to us. And so it fights against the invaders with these immune cells, such as the natural killer cells, and it's kind of our non-specific defense against anything that would come against us. Our adaptive immunity, on the other hand, is the body's response to specific pathogens. So meaning things that we recognize that we have seen in the past. So we have our T cells that are kind of on patrol, looking out for things that have been in our bodies in the past that were harmful to us. And then we have B cells that produce antibodies, which allow our body to recognize and fight back against these pathogens that it's encountered in the past. And the thing to remember is that we can encounter pathogens either by being infected before or by being immunized. So this is how it works when we receive an immunization. It prompts our body to create antibodies so that if we are ever stimulated by that particular pathogen in the future, those antibodies know, hey, we got to get there and neutralize that threat. So how do we maintain a healthy immune system then? Well, we know that we are best prepared for action when we provide our body a steady stream of key nutrients. So we know this because there are plenty of studies that show this. There are studies from the Harvard School of Public Health that showed that malnourished individuals are more prone to disease. And what they found was you didn't even have to be like completely malnourished, protein, calorie malnourished, or grossly underweight, but even people with micronutrient deficiencies, so vitamin D deficiency and some of these other things, can increase our susceptibility to disease. So in order to function at our best capacity, we know that our cells need all of the essential nutrients. Fortunately, yay, my favorite thing, plant foods are extremely high in essential nutrients. So we're going to talk about why eating plenty of plant foods is going to help protect us and help to boost our immunity. So there are actually a number of food choices that we can make that are going to be helpful for our immune system, and we're going to go ahead and go through those. So the first one is to eat fruits and vegetables, and I mean lots of fruits and vegetables. So there's actually kind of a wealth of literature that shows that fruit and vegetable intake actually correlates with better immunity. Or the converse, which the first study showed, they asked a group of participants to go for 2 weeks with no fruit and vegetable intake. And then they measured markers of immune function and found that people's immune function decreased significantly in the absence of fruit and vegetable intake. So that led people to think, maybe those fruits and vegetables are actually contributing something that helps our immunity. So there have been other studies that looked at the association of fruit and vegetable consumption with the common cold. And what they found was that people who had the highest intakes of fruit and vegetables had the fewest colds. So suggesting that there's something in those fruits and vegetables that helps impact our immune response. A group that studied influenza and complications associated with influenza found that low fruit and vegetable consumption was actually associated with higher hospitalization rates with influenza. So that suggests that people got sicker if they weren't eating as many fruits and vegetables. So those things would kind of fall under that initial innate immunity sort of defense that we have with those natural killer cells and our kind of non-specific defense. But the next study actually looked at our adaptive immunity. And they took a group of elderly subjects and they looked at people who they randomized them to 5 servings of vegetables per day or 2 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. And they found that the people who ate higher amounts of fruits and vegetables actually had a better antibody response to the pneumonia vaccine. So that suggests that actually both types of our immunity can be impacted by eating plenty of fruits and vegetables. So the bottom line is that we want to eat as many servings as possible of brightly colored fruits and vegetables every day. Now we know that those vibrant colors actually signify that there are more antioxidant and anti-inflammatory phytochemicals to help boost our immune system. So that's where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. This is one of my favorite handouts. It's from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and it's the Nutrition Rainbow. And I think this shows us very nicely in colorful picture format the broad array of beneficial and protective substances that we get by eating fruits and vegetables of all colors of the rainbow. So for example, if we're eating red, we're eating tomatoes, we're getting plenty of lycopene, which is an antioxidant. Or if we're eating blue, like blueberries and purple grapes, we're getting anthocyanins, which are also antioxidants that destroy free radicals. So if we're adding a wide variety of colors to our diet, we're going to get a wide variety of beneficial substances that are going to help support our immune system and really support our health in general. Now, I wanted to make a brief plug here for mushrooms because mushrooms aren't very colorful, but they've actually been pretty well studied in terms of their immune boosting effect. And so even though they didn't necessarily show up on our brightly colored nutrition rainbow, mushrooms are actually superstars when it comes to immunity. They're very high in antioxidants. They are rich in selenium, which is a trace mineral that is felt to be important in immune response. And they are also a source of vitamin D, a plant-based source of vitamin D. So also a good thing to make a plug for. If you don't like them, that's okay. You got plenty of other things on the rainbow to look at, but since they weren't on the rainbow, I thought I'd give them a plug. Okay, I thought we would also just spend a few minutes talking about some of the different micronutrients that we hear a lot about in terms of immune function and kind of where we would get those in our diet. So the first is beta carotene, and beta carotene we know is a very powerful antioxidant. It reduces inflammation, and it also boosts our immune function by increasing those disease-fighting natural killer cells. So you're hearing all about these natural killer cells tonight, but they're really our first line of defense in terms of our immunity. So where are we going to find the most beta carotene? Primarily, we're going to see it in deep orange vegetables and fruits. So things like carrots and sweet potatoes, pumpkins and squash peppers. In our fruits, we've got mangoes, apricots, cantaloupes, papayas. So all of those deep orange colors provide a lot of beta carotene. The other thing, which is a bit surprising, is that also dark green vegetables are quite high in beta carotene. And you're going to notice a theme here that dark green vegetables show up on a lot of these different lists. So those are a really good addition to any diet, is eating more greens. Vitamin C is another vitamin that we talk about in terms of our immune response. We know that it's an antioxidant, and as such, it destroys free radicals and helps support our immune response. I think we all know about the citrus fruits being rich in vitamin C, or things like berries and kiwi and mangoes and papayas, but tomatoes are also a rich source of vitamin C. And I think people forget that actually vegetables contain a fair bit of vitamin C. So here again, we've got our leafy greens showing up, but also foods in the cruciferous vegetable category, such as broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage, are also pretty good sources of vitamin C. Vitamin E is another nutrient that is important in our immune response. It is also an antioxidant, and as such, it destroys free radicals and helps support our immune response. And look what showed up here again, leafy green vegetables. So our common theme is get more leafy green vegetables, however you can, in your diet. In addition, we would want things like broccoli, carrots, avocados. Now, vitamin E can also be found in things like nuts and seeds, which is helpful. And then also whole grain and wheat germ contain reasonable amounts of vitamin E. So you're going to get everything that you need. Now here we go with our vitamin D. So as Tracy alluded to, vitamin D actually may be helpful in reducing our risk of viral infections. So they found that vitamin D can decrease production of pro-inflammatory compounds and may be important in our response to viral infections. So where would we get vitamin D? So fortified cereals are pretty rich sources, as are fortified plant milks or fortified plant milk yogurts. Now, we all know about sunshine. We actually make vitamin D in our skin when we're exposed to sunshine. But unfortunately, because most of our lives don't allow us to get a whole lot of sunshine anymore, we perhaps work jobs indoors during the day. Or like many of us, we wear sunscreen whenever we're outside because we have skin cancer risk. So the prevalence of vitamin D in the general population, as Tracy alluded to, is actually quite high. So it's reasonable to have your vitamin D level tested. And if you are deficient in vitamin D, it is reasonable to take a vitamin D supplement daily, because sometimes it's just very difficult to get enough just through dietary sources and or exposure to sunshine. So make sure you've got adequate vitamin D. So zinc is another trace element that people talk about a lot with regards to immunity. So we know that zinc helps to boost white blood cells, and we believe that that's how it boosts immunity. And there actually is some data to suggest that there is benefit with the use of zinc supplements for the common cold. But I will tell you, in meta-analyses, which are kind of compilations of many different studies, the data is not consistent. So some are positive, and some really aren't. The thing with the zinc is that there can be some side effects associated with use of zinc lozenges and preparations like that. So there can be GI effects. Some people have had trouble with mouth ulcers. The intranasal zinc that people have seen, I think it's the brand name is Zicam, has actually been reported to be associated with loss of smell in some individuals. So something to be cautious about. So if there's a way that you could get plenty of zinc and not have any side effects, maybe that would be the better way to go. And in fact, you can get a lot of zinc through nutritional sources. So foods such as nuts, pumpkin seeds in particular, sesame seeds, beans and lentils are all very high in zinc content. So perhaps maybe just eating a serving of beans or pumpkin seeds or lentils every day might be a better source of zinc than using some of the supplements. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, our next dietary choice that we can make to boost immunity is actually to eat less fat. So we know that the average standard American diet contains about 36% of its calories from fat. And we know that diets that are high in unhealthy fats actually decrease our T cell function and impair our immunity. So people have actually studied what happens if you reduce the fat in people's diet somewhat. So there was one particular group that looked at a reduction of fat to about 15% of calories. And they found that that, combined with weight loss, actually had beneficial effects on cell-mediated immunity. So that doesn't sound so bad. Well, then there was another group that looked at reducing fat to really only 20% of calories in the diet. And that actually was shown to correlate with increased natural killer cell activity. And so that's actually pretty good. And it's encouraging to me that there were positive effects on the immune response, even with really fairly modest reductions of fat content in the diet. So, by way of comparison, if you are following a strictly whole foods plant-based diet with no added oils, such as like the Ornish diet or things like that, those diets can get as low as 10% of calories from fat. But if you reduce to even 20% of calories from fat, you're getting beneficial immune response. So just a little bit of food for thought, and maybe just if we could reduce our fat content somewhat, we might be a bit better off. When we do eat fats in the diet, what we want to do is we want to focus on healthy fats. We know that moderate consumption of healthy fats is actually helpful in the absorption of our fat-soluble vitamins, which include vitamin A, vitamin E, and vitamin D. So we need some fat to be able to absorb those vitamins from our diet in adequate amounts. So healthy fats would be things like nuts and seeds and avocados. I'll briefly mention a few food items that, in addition to being healthy fats, have some other beneficial compounds in terms of immunity. So sunflower seeds and Brazil nuts, we know, are also high in selenium, which we had mentioned earlier is a trace element that can be beneficial for immunity. We know that pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds are high in both magnesium and zinc, which we mentioned. Walnuts, flax seeds, and chia seeds are very high in omega-3s. And omega-3s are important in terms of reducing inflammation in the body. And then finally, avocados, which are just terrific because they have not only healthy fats, but they're also high in carotenoids and glutathione, which is another antioxidant, but they're also high in vitamin C and also vitamin E. So vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin, so you've got healthy fat to actually help you get better absorption of the vitamin E in the avocado itself.
Hey, Donna.
Yes.
While we're on fat content, we had a question into the chat. At what point is the fat percentage too low?
So if you look at studies, even you probably would not want to get less than 10%. So 10% is where the Ornish diet and many of the other strictly whole food, plant-based, no added oil diets fall. Some people feel that you don't need to go that low unless you are trying to reverse established heart disease. Okay, so the vast majority of us, like if you look at vegans in general, who are not necessarily whole food plant-based eaters, the average dietary fat tends to be in the order of about 26%. So about 10% lower than the average standard American diet. The difference is the type of fat. So the standard American diet is generally, it's 36% of calories from fat, but it tends to be very high in saturated fat, as opposed to healthy plant fats. But most people, most experts would not recommend eating a diet less than 10%. Okay, so our next choice that we can make to help boost immunity is to eat high fiber foods. So whether you may or may not know, our guts are full of trillions of little good bacteria. So as this little guy in the picture shows, we're not all bad. So in fact, we need those gut bacteria. They are important for our health. And those gut bacteria need fiber. We need to feed them fiber to keep them healthy. When we maintain healthy gut bacteria, that actually helps to maintain our gut integrity. It prevents our gut from getting leaky, and that actually also helps to maintain our immune function. So it's very, very important that we get adequate fiber in our diets on a daily basis. So how do we do that? We want to eat plenty of whole grains and legumes. Now, when I say whole grains, I really mean whole grains. I don't mean white rice or processed white flour. I mean as close to as grown as possible, meaning brown rice, quinoa, barley, oatmeal, to the extent that you can. You know, things like steel cut oatmeal actually have a much higher fiber content than the quick oats that you buy at the grocery. Now, quick oats are better than some other more processed foods, but the closer that you can get something to its natural state, the more fiber it is going to retain. Similarly, then, we would want to eat plenty of legumes. So we have peas and lentils and beans and chickpeas. So all of these things are very, very high in fiber content. We know that fruits and vegetables also contain fiber, but if you're really talking about bang for your buck in terms of the amount of fiber per serving, whole grains and legumes are really the superstars. Okay, our next choice to make would be to use spices and teas. And I think this is something that people might forget about, but herbs and spices actually contain very high levels of antioxidants. And so when we use a combination of herbs and spices in our foods, the availability of the beneficial compounds contained in those spices is actually boosted for maximum effect. So we get much better absorption of the beneficial compounds in a spice when we're using it in the context of food than, say, perhaps taking it as a supplement. Garlic in particular is a spice that has been well studied in terms of its benefit for immune system. We know that garlic actually increases natural killer cell activity. So here again, we've got those natural killer cells. And so there was one study, and it was done quite some time ago, but it's really the only randomized, it was a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial, which is unbelievable, in garlic. And they actually found that garlic intake was associated with a decreased risk of developing colds and also faster recovery from colds. So anybody who doesn't have some heads of garlic on hand at home, you know, you want to get some of those. Garlic in any form, just chop a little bit up, add it to your food. It's great. Okay, the next spice is turmeric. So we know that turmeric has anti-inflammatory properties, but I wanted to mention it in particular because it's turmeric has become kind of like a hot supplement lately. You know, you can buy it at the Costco in like big giant bottles. But I would just give a word of caution about turmeric when it's being used in supplement form rather than as a food additive because of the potential for adverse effects. So in fact, when people take turmeric in the doses that you get in supplement capsules regularly, it can actually have the same effect in the body as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like Motrin, Advil, Aleve, ibuprofen. And as a kidney specialist, I saw quite a number of cases of acute kidney failure due to turmeric, people taking too much turmeric on a regular basis. So I would really caution you to use turmeric as a food additive, you know, put it in your tofu scramble or mix it in with your lentils or things like that, but really be cautious about using turmeric strictly as a supplement. Okay, other spices and teas that have been shown to have immune beneficial response include ginger, cinnamon, black pepper, cayenne pepper, and then amongst the teas, the highest antioxidant content are in green tea, and then actually, unbelievably, hibiscus tea is even higher in antioxidant properties than green tea. It's the highest, actually, beverage of all beverages when studied in terms of antioxidant activity. So this is why, I don't know if anyone knows him, but Dr. Michael Greger, he has his daily dozen, and he strongly recommends some hibiscus tea every day for folks. And so getting back to my earlier point, we really should avoid use of food components in isolation. We know that the maximum benefit that we get to our health comes from eating whole foods. And we think that that's because we actually need the synergistic relationship between all components contained in a whole food in order to get that beneficial response. And that's why the use of whole foods is preferred over taking foods in pill or extract form. So there are many studies that show, well, fruit and vegetable intake is beneficial for, people who have lung cancer. But then when we study vitamin E supplements, there's no benefit whatsoever. And so I think it's really more we have to look at our whole food consumption than really looking at single individual components. All right, and then another food choice that we can make to boost our immune response is actually to avoid foods that we know are specifically inflammatory. So foods that have been shown in studies to increase inflammatory markers in the body include dairy in all forms. So that's milk, cheese, yogurt, buttercream. All forms of dairy have been shown to increase inflammatory markers. Meat has been shown to increase inflammation. That means red meat, chicken, fish, all forms of animal protein do increase inflammatory markers in the body. Refined sugar increases inflammatory markers. And for anyone who was with us last week, Tracy gave a very nice kind of personal synopsis of why omitting refined sugars from her diet helped her with an inflammatory or autoimmune condition. And then finally, we know fried foods can also increase inflammatory response.
Donna?
Yes.
One quick thing. I had read, because yes, flours and sugars really do affect me. And I read that when your blood sugar spikes and rises, the white blood cells actually go to sleep for up to 6 to 8 hours when you eat those kind of sugary foods, which I didn't realize, but it makes sense. And they said that's why, diabetics get more infections, because again, it puts your white blood cells to sleep. Is that?
I can't tell you that I know of any medical data on that.
Okay.
But it makes sense that when people have poor blood sugar control, I mean, we do know it does impair, I don't know about the going to sleep thing, but it does impair immune response when you're having persistent high blood sugars.
And right now, like they say, as we're all trying to keep our immune system up, that would be a great thing to stay away from. And I also had a question on the Q&A. Can you comment on vitamin B12 supplements?
Yeah, so vitamin B12 supplements are important for people who are eating a plant-based diet because we tend to not get adequate vitamin B12. But in terms of vitamin B12 having a specific effect on immune response, not necessarily. It's just important for our overall health. And again, if we have any micronutrient deficiency, that's going to impair the whole function of the body.
And is there a difference between B12 and a B complex? Like I see a lot of different B vitamins out there. Can you?
Yeah, so B complex would be a supplement that contains not only B12, but folate and B6 and, so all of the other B vitamins. So, most people, again, aside from B12, if you are eating a whole food plant-based diet, you are not going to be deficient in those other vitamins. It's really only B12 and then for some people, vitamin D. So does that make sense? Okay, so in summary, the things that we can do from a food perspective, from a nutrition perspective, to boost our immunity would be to eat fruits and vegetables of all colors of the rainbow, and make sure you get in those leafy greens. We want to eat less fat. So if we can reduce our fat even moderately to about 20% of our calories, that would be of benefit. We want to focus on moderate consumption of healthy fats. So we're much better off eating healthy fats than saturated fats. We want to eat plenty of high fiber foods so that we can feed our healthy gut bacteria. We want to use spices and teas for their beneficial antioxidant powers. And we want to avoid inflammatory foods. I think the thing that is most empowering to me is this statement. We choose what goes into our bodies. And so with that, we have the power to protect ourselves. So we can make the choice to eat a whole food, plant-based diet and be kind of that healthy, immune strong vegetable guy in the center, or maybe we don't make those choices and maybe we don't do as well. So by making these choices for ourselves, we actually have the power to affect our own health. And I think that's reassuring. I put up here again my contact information. If people have general questions about lifestyle medicine or about plant-based diets, you can reach me at onlyplantshere@gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram at only.plants.here. I post primarily on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. I don't really post very much, but if you needed to reach me that way, you could do so. Just make sure you let me know how I might know you. And so with that, I would just ask if there were any other questions. This was from one of our lovely rides on the C&O Canal.
Oh, I love that. That is gorgeous.
Yeah. And I'll go back to my info slide just so that if people need some time to copy that down.
Please do. Well, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. I know for me, it's been a 12-year journey of learning little tidbits here and there. So that was just chocked full. I'm so glad we have this recorded. Anybody who's on the line, if you want a friend, a family member, a neighbor to see this, all of these recordings are on the Newmarket Seventh-day Adventist Church's website. It's also Dining with the Doctors on Facebook. You can find us there. And next week, Donna is going to be giving us another little nugget. Somebody's not muted here. Someone else is going to be talking about exercise and getting active. So I wish we could all go on the canal and bike ride with you, but you'll be giving us some tidbits, correct? You want to give a little plug for that?
Mainly what we're going to talk about is why it is so important to our health to remain physically active.
Awesome. And I did have another question come up, and it actually was one I wanted to ask you. Somebody said, my whole family's vegan. My wife is vitamin D deficient. The doctors prescribe vitamin D. How can she supplement in a natural way besides the sun? And if I can ask one quick question, I had another girlfriend who was deficient, and her doctor said, as far as the sun goes, if you lay out in the sun for the 15 minutes with no, sunscreen, trying to get your arms or your legs some vitamin D, it's important not to go shower and use soap on those particular areas because that washes something away. So I'd never heard of that.
I have not heard of that. I don't know of any data about that. But other dietary sources of vitamin D would really be, I would look at fortified plant milks. So look at the nutrition facts on everything that you get. I mean, it should be something that we all get used to doing anyway.
We need a session on that, how to read our labels.
Well, indeed. And so, but if you look at the nutrition facts, it'll usually say, how many milligrams or units of a particular substance is in there, and then what % of your recommended daily allowance that is. And so that's, kind of another good thing. And sometimes things sneak in where you don't expect them. So, for example, iron. You think, oh, okay, well, I think of spinach. But the other day I was looking at my grape nuts box, and one serving of grape nuts is like 90% of your recommended daily allowance of iron. It was crazy. So I think, look at packages to see how much vitamin D there is, but fortified plant milks, fortified plant milk yogurts, some fortified cereals might be other dietary sources. And then I can't give you a specific milligram. Well, I probably could find it, but I don't know it off the top of my head in terms of mushrooms. But mushrooms do also have some vitamin D. Yeah.
Awesome. And we have another question that came in. Have you used turmeric root before? And if so, how do you use it?
Okay, so I'll give you the short answer. Someone sent some to me, and then I was kind of lazy and didn't figure out how to use it. I assumed that it would be similar to ginger, where if you have like when you use ginger, if you use like a ginger scraper, like the the little microplane things you could use, or the little zester, not a zester, but you know, with the little tiny holes.
Yeah.
What do you call that? But anyway, a spice grater. So that may be a way to use it. I typically just get turmeric, you know, actually at the International Food Mart in a bag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a prepackaged thing. But the International Food Mart, the Food Max up here in Winchester, has a lot of spices for way less money that you can buy in fairly good size. So that's where I get turmeric and cumin and things like that.
That's a great tip. I know that those international stores do have amazing values towards what you're going to get in the store for a little bit. And that's a great tip, because honestly, I've taken turmeric for years, but I probably need to stop doing the supplement as much and be putting more turmeric in my food. So I'm going to stop taking all the turmeric I've been taking over the years, because I had no idea that that could affect your kidneys and other things.
Yeah, it was actually fairly surprising, but my partners and I all started to see an uptick in this. And so we really had, and the more we dove into it, the more we realized. Now, granted, you know, that effect may be worse for people who are taking, say, certain other types of medications, but they're fairly common blood pressure medicines that they can interact with and cause this kidney trouble. So, you know, in general, I think, again, where you can get things in a whole food source or eat it as part of your diet, there's really little adverse effect for the most part.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions for tonight. So we're going to let everybody go, but please invite a friend or a family member or a neighbor for next week. That's how we're going to get the word out. And if anyone wants to see these again, they'll be recorded. You can find them on the church site, Dining with the Doctors on Facebook. And we just thank everybody for coming. And Donna, thank you so much again for presenting. And we look forward to talking to you again next week.
I'm looking forward to it. Good night.
All right, get out there, connect with your friends, get some exercise, and get some sleep.
Yes.